Hello, we're back again on The Knot. I'm Scott Freymuller, back with Shelly Netco. We're doing a he said, she said, and this isn't necessarily about relationship. This is about, we gave our truth, we told our stories a few segments ago, and we want to unpack from that. And the reason why we're doing that is to talk about how we feel, how we felt after we did that. That was a very emotional, it was for me, I know it was for you too. It's a very emotional process. And again, the purpose behind that wasn't to make anything about us. The purpose behind that was to demonstrate what your truth is and to help people understand what that looks like. It puts yourself in a very, very vulnerable place. It's super emotional, clearly. And it's something that I think people should talk about, like after counseling or whatnot. You go home to your partner and you say, hey, how was counseling? That's unpacking. Or after a traumatic event, it's good to talk about it. It's good to unpack a little bit and dial in, what happened, how you felt about it, that type of thing. So we're going to demonstrate that here. And again, we're not mental health professionals, but we're just, a couple people, well, you're a professional. I'm not. But, we just want to demonstrate that process and go through this a little bit and see, how we feel, how we did the last couple days and go from there. So I went first on my truth. And you went second, so you want to go first now?
Wow. Sure.
Okay.
I will do that.
Great, because I don't.
I will do that for you.
There you go. I like that.
Yes, I'll give you this one.
So, your story, I know you skipped over a whole bunch of things.
I did.
And you didn't get too deep on it, which I totally understand, right? That's your own deal. But it was still a big deal. And then, we mentioned before that you and I went and gathered some data outside, and it hit you after.
It did.
A couple days.
It did.
So tell me about what happened.
Well, what's interesting is, this is our subconscious that protects us, which is what we've talked about. Like your subconscious protects you when you're in trauma. It can protect you afterwards. It just knows what you need. But then once things start to come up and start to tickle the back of your mind, then it's your job to actually pay attention or not. So what happened after last week, which was funny. We just talked about funny side note. I think I ran in the bathroom last week to put deodorant on 10 times or something because I was just knowing that I was going to tell a story and knowing that it was it so deeply affected me. My body knows, and I read something today that said our bodies are a coffin for painful memories. And if you don't ever open that up and find a healthy way to process it, then they stay there. And imagine what that feels like if you can try to get that visual, right? So when I told my story, told my truth last week, what really was impactful for me was when you highlighted my marriage with my husband, which was amazing.
The Notebook?
The Notebook
Those
story.
letters,
the Notebook
I won't say
story.
it again, but
Yeah.
that was so cool.
And just quickly, it was,
That's so cool.
we were together 22 years.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time that it was when we were engaged, he was in Japan for a year. And he wrote me a letter, a card, or sent me a video every day. And I did the same with him. And so that's how you communicate. There was no cell phone. And we had this really clunky, we were both at Motorola at the time. So he's at Motorola in Japan. I'm at Motorola in Tempe at the time, I think. This super clunky first version of email. And I forget what it was called. But believe me, it was like World War II stuff. So we would both have to be on at the same time. And it wasn't you couldn't, it just didn't play out like actual email kind of stuff. It was very one sentence, and then you'd have to wait 15, 20 minutes, and then you get one sentence back. It was just really, when I think about that, I'm like, what was I living through,
Yeah.
How old am I? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's all this stuff comes to your mind, right? At the time, conversations on the phone, I can't tell you, we would spend $1,000 a month just having a conversation on the phone.
That's cool.
And we didn't talk every day, which is why we did the letters and all that stuff. So what happened to me with the unpacking situations is I didn't expect to go so deeply into that story. And what I thought, which was what made me so nervous that day, I thought I was going to go into, just shit from my childhood, my first marriage with an alcoholic, and then my husband dying in my arms, and then going into a relationship that was very toxic and full of a lot of emotional trauma. And, I thought that that's what I was going to do. But the only thing that really stuck with me after that session with you, that visit, that show, whatever, was talking about that deep love and that amazing relationship with my husband. So later that night, I guess, the next day, I just kept going back to that. It kept playing out. I kept hearing your words. We went out and talked to people that night. We went out and talked to people the next night. And I don't know, I think it was about credibility. You're excited about it, about the story, because you're a hopeless romantic. So to you, telling that...
I'm not hopeless romantic. I'm romantic.
No,
There's no hopeless.
Last week you said hopeless romantic.
Okay.
So
Well,
now you're
I'm
a hopeful romantic.
Hope romantic.
You're a hopeful romantic.
Okay, go with your story. Sorry. Didn't
But
interrupt.
so to you, that was an impactful story that was really important for you to tell to people about me.
Yeah, you're right. I was trying to get you a date, actually.
Oh my God.
Because it was so
Stop.
romantic. Yeah.
But you kept telling it, because when people would interact with us and you would say, you can't believe this, blah, 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 blah. It didn't matter who it was, because it was so impactful for you, because people don't hear stories like that. So for me,
it was like a love story.
it's a love story. Oh my gosh.
It's super cool.
So
Yeah,
for
and
me,
I did. You know what? I should have asked you too. So
No,
in
it's
that,
fine.
But I
It's-
didn't realize like.
I'm
how
actually
impactful
glad
it
it worked
was.
out like it did, because that's what made me unpack it. Because hearing you say that to people and having that conversation then over and over, and not knowing that that's what was going to happen
How big
and
of a
how
deal
it
that
played
was.
out, I was a mess. You saw me, I was a mess. I couldn't function.
That goes back to, knowing people's past and being truthful about everything, right? Because if you were with a partner, would you have done that? Would you have broke down like that?
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
But
Because you should.
But I've also been in a situation where I did, and then I was ridiculed. So that's not so cool.
And that's not okay, right? Like that's the
Right.
same thing as making fun of somebody for wanting to get counseling or whatnot.
Sure.
But that's I think one of the things that the purpose of this is to help people understand that if you do talk about a traumatic event, or you do, unpack or whatever, that there's going to be like a wave of emotion at some point after that. Normally,
Waves.
waves of or ripples or whatever.
Yeah, for how long?
And
The
I
rest
think
of my
that's
life.
part of the process, I think that's part of the process. And I think, I was saying it because it was almost like an intro for you. Like, I think any guy there would have dated you that night because
Oh my gosh.
because it's so cool, right? Like you wrote letters to this. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it again.
No, you're
but,
fine.
But you know what I'm saying. And it was really cool. And I was like so proud of you for doing that. And I'm joking about that, but literally, I was like, these were nice people that were, whatever.
Yeah, we were engaged.
Potential suitors for
Yeah,
you.
well, we were
So-
engaged in conversations. It
Yeah.
wasn't about that.
Yeah, but I wasn't like actively trying to get
No,
you a
I
date.
know.
That was kind of a joke, but it was like, hey, look at this lady. She's super cool, and I know her, and she like whatever writes letters to you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not joking about that. I don't mean to take it away.
speaks to my character.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too where you hear a story like that, and when I was one of our favorite movies was The Notebook, so it really resonated with me. Like that hit me too, because I'm like, God, that was so cool having that with some. You know what I mean? We didn't write letters to each other, but we watched the movie a lot. And
Right.
It's super cool and romantic and awesome.
Right.
So anyway, I think that was like that resonated with me. Maybe that's why I was saying it, and then it resonated. You know what I mean with you because you did it.
Yeah.
Which is even cooler.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit more about like unpacking it. I know. I mean, you described some of the events after that, but
Right.
there's some conversations after too. Because we talk about this show a lot.
Yes.
And we're getting a lot of contact from people outside now, and we talk about that. And even some people that contact us on the internet, and you're like, hey, you need to answer this person. So tell me more about like that. How was it for you? Like after that night,
Yeah.
and how did it go after that?
Well, I think what happened for me was I was surprised, and I know what grief is. And grief it's a lifelong friend. It's a lifelong process, and you just have to become friends with it, I think. But this was different because it's again the subconscious, and you think you're okay, and this is all taken care of, and this has been unpacked, and then when it's a new perspective on it, which is what happened last week, I think, then that made me see things differently. And then that put me in a place where it was asking myself questions about just vulnerability, because I felt vulnerable, you know, and I choose to be by myself now, but I felt alone. You know, it just brought up all these things that were just places of discomfort, and I had to sit in that discomfort and be okay with it, right? And we've talked about this a lot as far as being alone and being in that place where you don't have someone there and you can, you know, do something else or go, you know, whatever it is, you know, turn on a movie or,
Right.
you know,
You can disconnect in whatever way.
disconnect, zone
Yeah.
out, whatever you want to call it. But I just had to be with myself about the whole thing, and then ask myself those questions about, you know, what is this vulnerability? What does this feel like? What does it mean? You know, that kind of stuff.
What does it feel like?
Sometimes it's it's definitely uncomfortable when I feel vulnerable. When something like that happens, even we had a conversation the other day when I was like, you know, coming out of an appointment, and I was like, I just feel alone. You said you're not alone.
You never are.
I know, but when something happens that is touches a trigger, which for me is the alone thing, because the ultimate feeling of alone is someone, for me, my perspective and my experience is someone dying in my arms, someone I love dying in my arms. That's the ultimate alone. They're gone, that's it. I'm alone right here. I'm going to be alone. My life has changed forever. Like, those are things that are going through my head at that moment. So when I have something happen now that's, you know, where it brings up that alone feeling, although it's uncomfortable, I have to go through the process of first being a hot mess, allowing myself to feel all of it and just get through it, whatever that means. Lock myself in the closet, cry my face off for an hour, I don't know, whatever it is at the time. And I just allow myself to be where I am. And then once I get through that, then I go the next step, which is, it always feels better because the heaviness is gone, the knot, right? It's gone. And then I move to the next place, which is, okay, why did that feel like that? You know, what does it really mean? Why do I feel like that sense of alone now? Why do I feel vulnerable? So then it's just like moving through that, and then what's my truth right now?
So the end of that process is what is it? What is the end of that process? Is it acceptance? Is it like neutrality? Is it, what do you?
For me, it's neutrality. Yeah.
Like you have the memory, but you're like okay with it now, kind of. Is that a good way to describe it?
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
But it's not like it doesn't impact you as much because you processed it
Right.
and you talked about it.
But it doesn't mean, like when Carrie was here, it doesn't mean that her comment about after her husband passed away isn't going to trigger something for me and put me back in that moment, because that's what it doesn't take much to put me back in that moment. But then it was like, you know,
Not a
five
huge, it's not
minutes
as big
and
of a deal.
Yeah, 5 minutes and I was okay. But
Yeah.
I'm not one who's going to stifle emotions, and
You shouldn't.
no, and nobody should. But I mean, obviously, it's appropriate ways to process them, let them out, let people know how you feel. But just in a moment, I have to go through it and then just, you know, kind of gather myself and ask myself what that was about. And I knew instantaneously what that one was about.
That's what, it's funny when you were saying that just now, that's what commitment is. When people say commitment's not, like, commitment is being committed to somebody's well-being, right? And, you know, anybody who has a traumatic event, and we keep saying this over and over, right? Like, that's what this is about. Anybody who has a traumatic event, you have to be committed to them being better, right? Everybody around them does.
Right.
Their partner, their spouse, their friends, and that's part of the process. Like, that's part of growing in humanity, in our community, whatever you want to say, in your relationships. And like Carrie said, it's who you have around you, right? And I don't think I know that's so important, right? The people around you, I don't want to say they have to support you, but if they don't support you, they can't be around you. How can you grow and be better?
They have to support you.
You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. The commitment is critical. And when people say, you know, are we committed? That doesn't necessarily mean you're in a romantic relationship. That can mean like you're in a friendship. Like, hey, are you committed to supporting me?
Right.
And that's an important thing, and you don't need to ask that question. People demonstrate that by their actions, but
They tell you every day.
they tell you every day what they want, and that self-esteem to accept that, the answer, whether it's verbal or by actions,
Sure.
you need to be aware of that and accept it. And that's part of where you come, like where all of us in the process, you know what I mean? The people that give a shit, you start to process. If you're around people that don't give a shit, then you never process. You just change people that don't give a shit.
Right.
And that was, I think that's the point of this unpacking thing, right? Like you could talk all day long, and if nobody cares, then you can't unpack, right? There's nobody to
true.
unpack with. So that's super, super, super important. Whether it's a counselor, or whether it's your partner, or your spouse, or your mom or your dad, or your sister or brother, or whatever. But you got to unpack that stuff, and it's critical to understand that.
I think on that note too is what I'm just remembering is we did this on Thursday last week. Friday I was super busy, just involved in a bunch of other things that kept my mind busy.
Sure.
Because I had to be, because I was on a deadline for something else. So it wasn't until Friday night that I was at a place where I guess my mind opened up and I allowed everything to connect, because I was just on autopilot Friday during the day. So once that happened, that's when everything opened up, and it was like, wow, here this is. And that was a big surprise for me. So I think that was a good indication too of what happens when people do make themselves busy, run around, check out, watch TV, like all those things that people do to not address or not validate that something is real, that actually did impact them. I think that's a good indication of how that goes.
That's a big deal.
That showed me.
Yeah.
Because you were there, you saw it.
Yeah, it was tough, and but it's normal. It's okay. Like, it's not a big deal. So, well, I'm glad that you did that. And how do you feel now? Like right now, today?
I feel good. I feel great.
Do you?
Yeah.
You feel like, what does that mean? Good or great?
Good,
I'm going to
great.
push down a little bit, because I think it's important.
Yeah, because I hate good.
Because that's such a general.
I hate good. I'm such a hypocrite.
It's such a general thing. So
I
like,
know.
let's do the why, and let's dig in a little bit.
I feel clear. I feel back to where, which is awesome. Further along the path of understanding that I'm choosing to be where I am. I'm not alone, and I'm only as alone as I think I am. So it's all about my thoughts and what I choose to adopt as a thought, and then own that.
I almost think that part of this process, it happened for a reason, or however you want to say it, right? Like, this absolutely happened for a reason.
Absolutely.
But part of this process was almost like validating where we came from and where we are now in the process. Where you are now in the process, and that individuality, that aloneness, that work, all those things that it took, and the time it took. Like, sometimes it takes a super long time. Like, your brain just doesn't want to deal with this shit, Right. And your subconscious, and it protects you, right? Like, we talked about that a whole bunch. So, it's just such an amazing process, like how your brain goes through, and then what happens afterwards, like when you do your work, and you do it right, and you do give a shit, and you do all the right, not all the right things, I don't want to say all the right things, because they're different for everybody. But once you hit that spot, it's like a pinnacle. It's almost like, wah, you know?
Well, and I think
it's like, ooh la la,
right? Which is, I love that. But touching on the timeline too, is like, my husband died 14 years ago. And then it was about 4 years before I got into the next, long-term relationship. And in that process and during that time frame, I think what people do, because I was alone for a period of time, I was going to therapy, but for some reason I wasn't ready to be where I am now. And I mean, that's okay, because right now it is what it is, I like to say it's like dried cement. I can't change it, right?
Right, yep. Can't live in the past.
No. And then it wasn't until I got divorced 2 years ago that I did EMDR. And that was a game changer for me. It really was. And that's what allows me to be neutral on things, and allows me to be neutral on things that were traumatic, and relationships that were not healthy. And I can be friends with someone who meant a lot to me, and they still mean a lot to me, but not take on the trauma and not take on the past conversations and the past narrative and know that that is not real anymore.
That's good. That's cool. All right, well, my turn then, I think,
Yeah,
right?
I can't
It's
wait
time,
to
yeah,
hear.
because I
I
could
can't
feel.
wait to hear.
So,
Did I take long enough to give you time?
no. I mean, you could take as long as you want. I mean,
No,
we
I
can sit
mean,
here
you
for
didn't
an
want to
hour
go
if you want
first.
to.
So you didn't
So,
want to go first. I just want to make sure you got enough time.
Mine was super, super, super emotional, and what I realized in that process is that when it gets too emotional, I'll just get up and walk away, just like I did here, and that's something I can't do anymore. I need to stop doing that. And whatever that is from, or whatever that habit's from, it's a mechanism to protect myself from like sitting there crying. You know what I mean? But I should, not looking back, I would just sit here and cry now. Like we talked about that after, like we're not getting up anymore. And as long as people want to watch it, they can watch it, but we're not going to not do that because you have to do that.
Right.
So I was talking to John earlier, and he was going through some of the content. We can't call it film because it's not film. He's going through some of the content before we put it on the internet. And he's like, when did you decide you're going to do this? And I was like, August 20th. I think it was like right at August 20th. And, I just did an EMDR session before that, and it woke me up. I was like, holy shit. And that's when I realized, I was like, I actually wanted to kill myself subconsciously. Like, that was freaking brutal. So I started actually processing it then, because I never knew that. I never even put that together.
Right.
But in EMDR, it breaks you down, and you're like really open, and it's really powerful.
You can't hide from it.
And then that's where the whys come from. And that's a challenge. I think when you do that more, you feel this way. Why? Why do you feel that way? Why would you want to kill yourself? Well, because I felt fucking shameful because all the people that died, and because I made bad decisions in my marriage and blah, blah, blah. And, I fell in love, deeply in love, and, it didn't work out, and, all these different things, right? But it was all but partly because of shame and my subconscious and all this stuff. And in doing that, it exposed me. It made me it felt like I was almost like if you could cut me down the middle and just open me up. That's how I felt. And I felt sad. I didn't want to say this with, Carrie being here, but I can't believe I even had that thought subconsciously I did in my life. Why the fuck would I ever do that?
Wow.
I have a son, I have great friends, I have a great life. And I could never do this, And that's what really, really hit me. And I didn't really realize it. And we had this birthday party, and it wasn't a birthday party, it was like a summer celebration, but there was all these people there, and I was thinking holy shit, it wasn't really registering yet, but I'm like, wow, I would have missed this. And my son, blowing out my birthday candles at my son.
Wow.
It was crazy. So I moved forward, and then I was really, really, really scared to do that because I didn't know what I was going to say, right? And I could have said a lot more, but I didn't because I don't want to freak people out, right? But going through that process, I was disconnected, I was in the fire department. I could do that for days. And then when I was done with it, I looked at the camera and I'm like, oh, I'm freaking screwed. And then the next day, the unpacking piece of it was just that realization of where I was at. And I was disappointed in myself for that, but also knowing and understanding and accepting that I was there because nobody knew what to do, including me. And I didn't have the wherewithal or the tools to dig deep enough to understand the reason why. And that's why, that's why we're doing this, is because so people understand those red flags. It wasn't about my story. It wasn't about your story. It's about holy shit, you guys.
Tell me more about your unpacking.
Well, I just did.
No, I mean how that happened.
What do you mean?
Just
when?
how you processed it, just after the thing last week. I mean,
That was a cluster.
Besides, you didn't want to walk away.
I don't even know. I don't see, now I'm getting uncomfortable. I don't know how I did it. I just know I did it. And what it did was it changed. August 20th changed my perspective on my life,
Right.
and I see the world through a different set of glasses. People say that,
Different lenses.
it's not bullshit.
No,
it's
not.
really true.
It's true.
And the realization of, my relationships, the realization of accepting and being responsible for it, And it's.
I think you went through one of our conversations. You went through some anger that you didn't know was there.
Yeah, I was pissed at myself.
You're pissed.
Because I was pissed because I was in that state of mind, but I didn't know it. And I was mad a little bit because, and this is short term, it's not rational, because I think I missed part of like a more amazing life, right? Like I look back on my life and it's been so cool. Like I say, I'm not a victim and I'm not, I still had an amazing life. I'm super
Right.
grateful because I really am. But like my life at 80% was pretty good.
Right.
Now I'm at like 90 or even better. Now I'm like, holy shit, now what am I gonna do? And the answer to that is this, right? Like we talked earlier, I could never do this unless I would have done all the EMDR and all the work and, done all those things and been through that pain. I also wouldn't have the content to do it or the understanding to do it. I wouldn't have the, 8 years of therapy. I wouldn't have
Or the desire to help people.
or the desire to help people, right? Because the first thing I thought, and I've always felt like I missed the fire department because I miss helping people. And then, my construction company, we help people and we're participating in the community and we do all those things. We do charitable events and, we're doing all those things. But I just realized like I missed that. And then being able to do this and having this opportunity, I'm super grateful for. And I realized like I was made for this. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I don't have any reservation at all, So I think that's part of the unpacking. But like I'm on my purpose now. I'm totally alone. And when I say totally alone, I mean like alone in a good way. Like I don't have any other things, I go home by myself. I go, you know what I mean? Like I'm by myself. Yeah. I have friends and stuff. I hang out and do great things, but it's really, really powerful. And I realize like how, I don't want to say sick, but how like, I guess sick. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but like how all these things in the back of my head were like affecting my life and my reactions and my boundaries, like Carrie said, and who I would let in my life and who I'd let around me and what I'd put up with and what I wouldn't put up with, and then how I would handle it when it wasn't okay. And I think I was still pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, that goes back to what we talked about with self-awareness. At the time, your self-awareness was, this is where I am, I'm good.
Yeah.
Until you evolve.
Here's the really, like I just realized this. So you have this subconscious trauma, right? And that affects your behavior. And it affects your relationships, it affects your business, it affects all these things. So here's the question. If you weren't in that state and in your subconscious,
right,
you wouldn't have had as much trauma after. Right. Because sometimes your reactions to certain situations or events or relationships or whatever, you react harshly in an uncharacteristic way and you actually create more fucking drama.
Right, and more things come from our
and
subconscious than we even know.
Right,
like most of things.
Or you're with somebody that pushes your buttons just because they're so frustrated from all the shit. You know what I'm saying? Like you love each other, but you're like,
they think your
fuck.
behavior's like, what did you just do? They
Right.
have no idea. They're
Right.
not clued in.
Right.
And then that changes everything with
it does.
dynamic.
It changed it, when I was married, it changed it in my last relationship. And it also changes, like, I think the love is the same, but like I love myself now, like deeply, which is a trip. I don't think I've ever done that before. And I'm super, super fucking proud of this, and I know it's going to work. I know it's going to help people. Like I don't have a doubt. You know what I mean? Like there's no doubt in my mind. And I'm not living from a fearful state. I'm living from like a very sure, very confident state, not in a cocky way, but like I know who the fuck I am, and I know I can do this, and I know it's going to work, and I know we're going to help people, and we're going to have a call-in number, and we're going to have a charitable foundation, and we're going to fucking do it. Like it's not, I'm not saying that like to pump this up. I'm saying that because that's how I really feel. So you asked me like what unpacking is. Unpacking is like me being a fucking confident dude that knows that I can do this.
You had to go through the river of shit to get there.
We had to go through a river of shit to get there. I did. And you know what else was bugging me too is that river of shit I put other people through as well. And that, I'm sorry for that. Right?
Well, but what's interesting is like the perspective is you weren't trying to drown them. You were like with them as like a life preserver at the time.
Oh, for
right?
sure. But not even, I mean, somewhat. But, I just know that, I have the tools to be truthful now. And I have the tools to understand now, And it's so different. It's just so different that I would have handled things way different. I'm never going to go back. I'm not saying I want to go back. I'm here for a reason. Things happen for a reason. And I accept it, and I'm responsible, and I learn from it. I wouldn't do a lot of the shit I did again, ever. But I understand why. It's not just saying it, it's knowing it. And, we joke around that after, these videos, nobody's like, I'll never date again probably. And that's
Same.
fine. But the funny part is, well, if you'd let me be your dating coach, I could get you a date like that.
Okay. By talking
'Cause
about
I'm
the
super
notebook.
good at it, yeah.
Sure.
Dude, that was good, by the way.
That was not good.
But back to the unpacking thing is here's what else too is I'm actually like I've always been happy. I've always been like upbeat, always,
Right.
and I've always had like that personality where I want to play
Yeah.
and talk to everybody. But now like I want to play and talk to everybody, and I'm like super conscious.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
I'm really, really here, and I really, really like I'm absorbing it. And there's nothing in the back of my mind that's like hurting me.
Well, before it was just because. Now it's purposeful.
It was purposeful before, but so here's the thing: there's no distraction, there's no static, and there's no third. That's the difference.
That's not purposeful.
No, it's still whatever. I don't know what you're
Go.
saying. Wait,
Keep going.
Okay, no. That's not whatever that. What I'm saying is like I don't have that subconscious pain anymore.
Yeah.
So now I'm like really present without a third in the back of my mind or subconsciously being
Right.
like worried or stressed or like what the fuck or getting angry at little stupid shit or whatever. Does that make sense?
And being mindful.
Did I explain that right?
Yes.
So the point of that is, doing your work, it changes everything. And like Carrie was saying, it's not just about your personal life, it's everything together. Like your brain affects everything. And being in a state where, you have those stresses or you have those things in your life that are distracting that you may not even consciously think about, it holds you back. You know what I mean?
It does.
And you can't explain where you're at appropriately, and you can't.
And you're not aware until something happens that
Yeah, it's
raises
so
the awareness.
fucked up. And this should be like an EMDR like advertisement the whole time. I swear to God.
It's true.
I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. That changed my
I
entire
understand.
life.
I understand.
And one of the things that bugged me is I didn't have that support while I was doing it. Like I wished I had more support while I was doing it. But it was like it's like life changing. And when I was telling Carrie, I mean, you change your life incrementally every day until that light comes on. You're like, bing. You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, fuck.
Yes.
This is who I. This is what? Wait.
And it's just
You
going
know?
to get better, and you feel like you're already lit up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So anyway, that's my unpacking.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything else to say about that. But I don't want to cry. I would cry if I had to cry, but I don't feel like
Okay.
that, which is great,
That is great.
right?
Right.
And I can think about all the stuff. I can think about everything, and it doesn't upset me anymore.
Now that's one thing. So we talked about that. So the first time when I was talking about Don and his death and whatnot, or whatever we were talking about, and I cried. And I forget when it was. Oh, it was that when we were at your office that day and we were going through some stuff and talking and like whatever it was.
Oh yeah, we were
talking-
testing the.
we were talking about love.
Oh yeah.
You remember?
Yeah. Yep.
And again, I was a mess. But because I was talking about love and because it was so meaningful for me. And I was going through details of what it means and details of all kinds of stuff. And you said to me, do you feel like you need to do some more work because you're in pain? And then after we brought it around, it took us like a week to get to this place, I think, where there's a difference between trauma from traumatic events and trauma from not having the love you had, kind of a thing, or trauma from love, right?
Because you miss it.
Because you miss it.
That's okay.
Yeah. So it's not like the traumatic thing where somebody died and, you're on the fire department, whatever that is, and all those things and all those stories you told.
Sure.
Those are gnarly.
Right.
But mine is like, this is so big and it was half my life. And it's the kind of thing that's like, no, I don't want to do anything to unravel that so I don't feel that love, because grief is love.
I totally agree with what you said, and you just did something that I caught, and that's the thing. Like you said, that what I did on the farm was so gnarly. Like those events were gnarly, right?
Right.
But there's no difference between, and this is why I want to point this out. I'm not trying to like challenge you, But those events you think like, oh my God, those were so crazy and so massive and whatever and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But your event is just as important and just as impactful as anything I ever dealt with. And the message here is that people need to understand that it's not a comparison. That if a traumatic event is a traumatic event for you, it's the same level of trauma for this person as it is for this person over here, and it doesn't matter what the difference is. Trauma is trauma.
True.
And I just wanted to make a point of that, because sometimes people think that, you know, just because I've had all these events, that their event wouldn't mean anything, and it does. It's the same thing. It means just as much. It's just as important, and it can impact your life just the same. And that's the whole point of this too, is that it's not just about first responders. God bless them all. Thank you so much, you know, to the military for, you know, keeping us free. And we couldn't do this show if it wasn't for them, and America and the USA and the whole thing, all the people in it. Like, I get it.
Yes.
I'm not taking anything away from that. We're all equal. We're all, you know, citizens of the United States. Thank goodness. Blah blah blah. I don't say blah. I don't mean to disrespect.
Yeah, no, I get
that.
it.
I'm trying to be
it's
as,
just
like,
that you don't have enough time to go into all of it.
But my point, like, I'm just going on. But my point right now is, didn't Ken tell us to fucking shorten this stuff
He did.
up? Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that. Anyway, but my point was, is
There's a clapper.
it's like, yeah, right. I know. It's just like, I don't know. It's
Well, I think we're back to where you're talking about the
It's the
traumatic
same.
event of his death.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm talking about not wanting to rid myself or remove myself
I totally get that.
from the
From the
feeling
memory and the
and the
feeling.
memory
I totally get
and
that.
all that.
I
So
totally get
that's where there was a disconnect
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, I get it.
I totally get it.
Why would you
I
want to
totally
do
get it.
that?
Yeah, yeah. You know, like when your child is born, like I wouldn't want to forget that ever.
No.
You know what I'm saying? That's a great feeling.
Yeah, this is the same kind of thing.
Yeah. It's I get it. And I think I'm trying to like wrap my head around the point, or everybody's the same. You know what I mean? Like we talked a little bit about, you know, like race and religion, and this is never going to be about any of that ever.
No.
And we're not going to make a political statement ever. That's
No.
not the purpose of this.
No.
The purpose of this is to say we're all the same. And the purpose of this is to say that anyone's trauma is the same as anyone else's. And it's all just as important. And you should never, ever think that, oh, I can't go because, you know, it's not as a big deal as like somebody at war. Because to you it might be. Because you don't know what I mean, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Your brain is different. You're a different person. So be you and know that you can get help and know that you can. That's my point I was trying to make. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Without disrespecting, you know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I get it.
I don't know what the fuck I'm saying right
No,
now. But I'm trying to make that point.
You're making your point well.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a big deal.
It's just the kind of thing where if it's like if it affects you, even you might not even realize it, but it's just when something big happens, you need to talk about it.
And that's one of the reasons why I agree with you. Sorry,
Because
like
I have
this
so
thing
much,
popped into my head.
I have
and I'm
so
like,
much
"Burp."
more to say, and I don't want to I even say it because it's going to go forever, and Ken will get mad at us.
You cannot get that. But anyway, so, well, I was just going to say that's one of the reasons why we're going to create this platform where people can call in.
Yes.
Because when you don't feel like it's important, you can just make a phone call and be like, hey, man, I'm thinking about this, or whatever, right? It'll be free. Nobody's going to know about it, whatever. Hopefully that helps, right? Actually, I know it's going to help. I'm not hoping. I know it will.
Absolutely.
But it can be like an anonymous thing. You don't have to give your name or nothing. Just call in.
Right.
Be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, whatever. And then we'll triage it and put it where it needs to go. And we'll pay for it.
People
You know,
need
that's
that.
what the foundation is going to do.
People
So,
need that.
anyways, I think we talked enough about unpacking, clearly.
I feel pretty unpacked.
I feel unpacked too.
Is your
All right.
suitcase empty?
And we're not joking around. I mean,
I know.
My suitcase isn't empty, so
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, thank you everybody for
That's a
watching.
Carly thing.
I really appreciate it. This is Scott Freymuller, Shelley Netco with the Knot. Thank you.